Welcome to the Odds Breakers, number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
Welcome back to podcast 18 of 2024. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neill. You can follow me on Twitter at OBKiev. Follow us at the Odds Breakers and follow us on social media / the Odds Breakers. This episode is being brought to you by BetMGM. Bet $5, get $150 worth of free bets. Also now in North Carolina. So if you live in North Carolina, make sure you get this bonus at BetMGM. Terms, conditions, and location apply. Just click on the link in the description of this podcast. If you'd like to support the Odds Breakers and benefit from our premium plays, please visit theoddsbreakers.com, click shop, become a member, pick any for winning cappers to get their premium plays before the line moves. You can also support us on patreon.com. If nothing else, please visit the Odds Breakers and become a free picks and Telegram subscriber. Another great weekend in the books. Profitable college basketball weekend here. 7-4 on Saturday. I believe 2-3 on Sunday. But altogether up about 6 units. UFC very close to even, down 0.6 units. So still a great weekend over on my side. Conference tournaments are heating up, and we have a wonderful guest for you in Mr. Matt Youmans, the editor and host at the Vegas Sports and Information Network, VSiN, and college basketball and NFL and college football specialist. Matty is wonderful in his plays. He's been sharp all year over at VSiN. Can't wait to talk some conference tournaments when he comes on this show. But before Matt comes on, we are bringing back our college basketball NCAA tournament challenge where you can win a free $500. All you have to do is retweet the podcast or give us a 5-star review on your podcast platform. Send it to info@theoddsbreakers.com, just a screenshot of it, and you are entered to win $500 just by filling out a free bracket based on CBS Sports. But that's not all. We actually have multiple tournament challenges because we are partnering with This Season. They are back to bring us some wonderful NCAA tournament challenges for our betting pleasures. They have a great Survivor where you can just pick your teams and they have to survive all the way to the end or as far as the other contestants, and you can win a bunch of prizes. And also for $10, you are entered into another tournament challenge where we're giving away $500 for the Odds Breakers and their main NCAA tournament challenge over at This Season, where they're giving away $20,000, $10,000 to the winner, $10,000 split up between some of the places. So please check out the szn.com/oddsbreakers to get into these wonderful tournaments. It is well worth it, and you have multiple ways of winning some free money at the Odds Breakers and at theseason.com. All right, without further ado, let's talk some college basketball conference tournaments with our wonderful guest, Mr. Matt Youmans. This segment was brought to you by AG1. Why take a bunch of different things when you can just mix 1 scoop of powder and water once a day? Every scoop is packed with 75 vitamins, minerals, probiotics, and whole food source ingredients of high quality that give me major benefits like gut and mood support, boosted energy, and even healthier looking skin, hair, and nails. If you want to take ownership of your health, try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 Travel Packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/oddsbreakers or click on our podcast episode description. Very excited to welcome back a college basketball specialist and editor and host at the Vegas Sports and Information Network, and Mr. Matt Youmans from VSiN.com. You can follow Matt on Twitter at MattyYoumans247. March Madness is here, my man. This is actually, my opinion, probably the best week to visit Vegas, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about it. But you have to have a passion for college basketball. If you don't, then you might not answer it that way. But, obviously I love college basketball. So you got the conference tournament week and then the first week of the NCAA tournament. To me, that's the best 2 weeks of the year. Mm-hmm. It's great to be here. I think it's better than Super Bowl, but obviously there's a lot more people who are football fans who are going to say Super Bowl is the best time to be in Vegas. Whatever. Everybody's got their own preference. It's kind of like ranking fast food franchises. Not everybody's going to agree on it.
Which we did last July or August when you were on. That was a lot of fun. I had a blast talking about Portillo's and Culver's and stuff. I was going to bring that up, but we just have so much to talk about, so I was going to possibly save that to the end. But here's the thing. From 2003 to 2016, I did not miss going to March Madness once. And, of course, this is pre-kids. Maybe my first one was born towards the end. It faded, of course. Sports betting started legalized in other states and everything, but I was always there. Had friends out there as well, and it was just an amazing time, especially kind of in the twilight years where you could be a platinum member and get free hotels at what used to be Bally's, the now Caesars Club, right? And so I remember going to ESPN Zone at New York. Used to watch the tournament games there. So, those were some of the best times in my life doing that. So I agree. Now I kind of look at this weekend coming up being the conference tournaments, a little bit less busy. Prices are not quite as high as other weekends, like obviously Super Bowl or the first week of March Madness. And you might be able to get around a little bit easier. So I think I would prefer this weekend nowadays, Matt, but that's just my opinion.
Well, here's the difference. You got a lot more games in conference tournament week than you do in NCAA tournament week. And that's one thing a lot of people don't think about. If you're betting on the games, it makes a difference. If you're just here for the party atmosphere mostly and to have a good time, I would say come for the first week of the big tournament. But if you're a college basketball diehard, it's great to be here for conference championship week, especially if you're betting a lot of these conferences. So I guess that's the way I would answer the question. I tell people all the time, forget Super Bowl, come out for the first week of the NCAA tournament, that first weekend. It's just awesome.
It's amazing. And usually just getting warm enough for the pools and everything, and all the parties are going on.
In fact, glad you mentioned that, because we have a cabana at Stadium Swim at Circa on Saturday, all day Saturday for Conference Championship Saturday. Ooh. We set this up months ago. Paula Howard, Mitch Moss, and I over at VSiN, and we got to have a big party out there. So you hit it, right? The weather's starting to get warmer, so now you can hang out at places like Stadium Swim and watch these games and bet these games all day.
Absolutely. And one thing about Derek over at Circa, he'll make sure the pool's warm enough just in case the air isn't. So you guys are going to be set up no matter what. Well, that just made me really jealous. Jesus. Anyway,
you can come over. You can get away from the wife and kids. You can come over.
I would love to. My daughter just had her tonsils out. Don't think it's going to fly, but I'll be watching you guys on Twitter for some pictures. Maybe I can get some good pictures and use my imagination there, my man. But a lot of college hoops to talk about. But before that, we always got to talk a little NFL draft as Chicago guys like you and me. We're Bears fans. We got to talk about the Bears. Here they are. They're in the great position being talked about the most, right? The number one pick of the draft, first overall pick. What do you think the Bears do with this first overall pick?
Well, what I think they're going to do with it and what they do with it, probably not the same thing. But I'll give Ryan Poles, the GM of the Bears, credit for what he did last year. He fleeced the Carolina Panthers on that trade. And, he picks up DJ Moore, and he gets a number one draft pick. And, the Panthers really didn't have – I don't think they had a solid plan or a vision for what Bryce Young was going to be as an NFL quarterback. And then, 1 month into the season, everybody's like, whoa, hey, look, this guy's way too small. He's not a franchise. Look how bad he looks in this offense, and everything just goes downhill fast. And the Bears are sitting there with the number one pick now in a quarterback-loaded draft at the top. So Ryan Poles played his cards right there. And we have to give him credit for that. Is he going to do it again? Is he going to make the right call? See, in the history of the Bears organization, they don't make it a series of right decisions, right? They always throw in a really bad one, like, hey, let's trade up from Mitch Trubisky. And who is this Patrick Mahomes guy? Anyway, I think what the Bears should do is trade down to number 2. And I've said this a bunch of times on the VSiN shows. Trade down to number 2 because Washington Commanders will give up a ton to move up. to number one. Obviously, you're going to swap first-round draft picks. At least you'll get next year's one from Washington and probably another two, and who knows what else you can get, because the Commanders desperately want Caleb Williams to be the face of their franchise. He's from the D.C. area. You know, there are a lot of people who think he could be the next Mahomes. If he that's part of the fear factor I think the Bears are dealing with is, hey, what if we trade this pick and he does turn out to be Mahomes? Then we're going to look like the biggest bozos of all time. But, you know, I don't think he's the next Mahomes. He's got flashes of Patrick Mahomes in his game. Mm-hmm. But if you go back and watch some of the college tape, like the USC Notre Dame game, you're going to see plenty of flaws in Williams. Now, I do like Caleb Williams a lot. I'm not degrading him or anything like that. But I like Jaden Daniels, quarterback from LSU, just as much, if not a little bit better. And I think Daniels might turn out to be a better pro. He's bigger, at least taller in terms of 6'1" or 6'4", and Caleb 6'1". And, you know, when I watched Jaden Daniels at LSU all season, really well coached by Brian Kelly, made very few mistakes. I think he accounted for 50 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. I'm pretty sure 40 TD passes, 10 rushing, and only 4 picks. Didn't make many mistakes. He's a playmaker from everything I understand. Very solid character kid, which you could say the same thing about Caleb Williams. But if the two quarterbacks are comparable, and I think they are very comparable, and I'll rate them both better than Drake May. If you're the Bears, trade down to 2, load up on assets, draft Jaden Daniels at number 2, and you still got a hell of a franchise quarterback here and a lot more pieces you can add to your team. The Bears have done a great job, I think, in the last 2 years making some right calls. That's what I would do. Now, saying that, Kev, I would say that I wish I was in on the workouts and all the interviews, and it gives you a little bit more insight into the players, so I would know for sure that that's the right decision to make. But just based on everything I see, all the games I watched and everything I read about these players, that's, I think, the move I would make. And I have a lot of confidence that Jaden Daniels is going to be a hell of an NFL quarterback. And I think that'd be the right thing for the Bears to do. Will they do that? Probably not. And here's another thing. I talked about this on the show, and then somebody texted me and said, hey, based off what you said, I think I should bet Jaden Daniels will be the number 1 overall pick at 25-1 odds. I said, no, don't do that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that whether the Bears keep number 1 or trade it to the Commanders, Caleb Williams is going to be the number 1 pick. Right. I think Jaden Daniels should be the number 2 pick.
I agree with you 100%. It's funny. When I heard you say this, I just had Will Hill on, and it was a couple weeks ago, and I tuned into the morning show at VSiN, and then I was like, well, geez, I just went over with Will. I said I would prefer if the Bears can get a haul, get a guy like Jaden Daniels, because Daniels, when he got in that LSU system, got away from ASU, man, he looked so good. And last year looked amazing. And I have, just like you, Williams probably a smidge higher than Daniels. But I'd rather, they could both bust. We don't know what's going to happen, and Williams isn't perfect. He has his issues. And yeah, I 100% agree. I hope the Bears get a haul and do that. I mean, would I cry if they don't? No, I think I think Williams is going to be possibly a great quarterback, right? It's not going to be it wouldn't be the worst thing to not get a deal done and finally get your franchise quarterback that would have been picked first last year. So 100% right. Agreement. But then that brings me to the Patriots at number 3. I actually think Washington is holding out, and then they will probably offer the Bears something to get to number 1, because I think Cliff Kingsbury was hired for a reason. Well, that's a whole nother thing right there. But what did the Patriots do at number 3? Or what will they do? You can answer either what should they do or what will they do.
Yeah, I'm not a Patriots insider. I do follow one of their beat writers, and based off what he's been reporting, I think the Patriots are either going to trade down, which wouldn't be the worst idea. If you don't love the quarterback who's there at 3, you probably should trade down, because there's going to be somebody else who loves that quarterback and will give you a lot to move up to the 3rd spot. Or maybe take Drake May or Jaden Daniels, who's ever there at number 3. I think, if the Patriots got Daniels at 3, I think they would have to be thrilled with that, right?
Oh, God, yes. Yes, absolutely.
I'm not convinced on Drake May, but I know there are others who are. So I would say if the quarterback you really like is there at 3, you take that quarterback. If you don't really like the quarterback, you trade down because you get a lot of value from trading down. But it's hard to say what the Patriots should or would do at this point. But I think that's my assessment of it right now. It sure looks like quarterbacks are going to be 1, 2, 3 off the board.
Well, then Mac Jones is gone. It makes him more quarterback. I mean, I would trade down if I was the Patriots either way. Yeah. And as I just think there's a lot of – I don't like the North Carolina quarterback. And maybe I'm just biased because of Mitch Trubisky coming from North Carolina. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was just – I don't know. I don't know if that's proper, if I should be thinking like that. But I mean, seriously, this is also the ACC that was a very weak conference, in my opinion, minus the Clemson and finally Florida State last year. So that's who he played against is those kind of, teams that were just no good. But now I have made lower. I would even rather have Marvin Harrison, and I'm normally not a wide receiver guy at all in the top area picks. But I think Marvin Harrison is special, so I would possibly grab him if I was the Patriots. But I think trading down would be the number one thing. And yeah, I mean, tons of movement today in the NFL. So if you're not following, Kirk Cousins is already at Atlanta making $45 million a year, $150 million guaranteed. Just a ton of amazing moves today, and we all got to study up on them because obviously we're going to be betting season win totals soon. I haven't played one yet, but I might start thinking about that soon, Matty. Back to college hoops. We have March Madness, and obviously this conference tournament time, but I'd be slighted not to ask you who your top 8 teams are in order. Let's just say you were the committee, Matt. How would you see these teams, ones and twos, starting with the top?
Okay, well, there's two different things, two different ways to answer that question, because how the team should be seated at the top are not exactly how I have the teams power rated, right?
Let's do power rated then.
I'll go with my power ratings. Because I don't think there's any doubt when you look at all the different metrics that Purdue's got the best resume and should be the number 1 overall seed. But the way I've got the team's power, I've got UConn 1, Purdue 2. I'll double check here. North Carolina, I've actually got 3. Tennessee 4, Kentucky 5, Houston 6, Arizona 7, and Auburn 8. That's my top 8, my power ratings right now.
Okay, good stuff. Pretty close to mine. I have UConn number 1. Similarly, I actually have Tennessee number 2, and I know the Rick Barnes thing. And between Matt Painter and Rick Barnes, God, wouldn't it just be the year that they both play each other in the finals this year, right?
Well, they did actually. Barnes and Painter matched up in the Sweet 16 in 2019, and that was a game Purdue won in overtime with Carson Edwards. Was a hot shooter, and then Purdue advanced to face Virginia and appeared to have the game won in the final seconds.
Oh, God.
Virginia threw in that shot to force overtime, and Tony Bennett gets over the hump and beats Matt Painter. He goes to the Final Four and wins the whole thing. How ironic was that? You had Barnes, Painter, and Bennett all in the same regional final, and then Bennett got the monkey off his back.
I remember exactly where I was, and that was an interesting overtime final against Texas Tech that very questionable call in overtime, if you remember that one too. But
if I remember that, hell yeah, I remember that. I've been talking about it for the last 4 years. Tech got screwed by the officials on 2 calls in that game. By the way, I had Tech on a huge futures long shot ticket that year, so I was able to hedge, at that point. But still, it was triple-digit odds. I had Texas Tech out that year, and Tech definitely got screwed by 2 calls in that game. It's funny how the only people who ever talk about stuff like that are like the diehard psychotic fans or those of us who are betting on the games, right? You never hear the media or the announcers mention how that call turned the entire game. Tech should have won that game. The officials, it was a screw job there.
Oh, absolutely, and I was probably both. I probably also had a Tech future, but I'm sure I would have hedged as well. So I was a psychotic fan and that, but I also dealt. I'm not going to get into my Badgers either. We'll just leave it at that. But UConn, Tennessee, North Carolina 3, Purdue number 4 for me. I just think I love Zach Edey as a kid. I think that the Big Ten really liked Purdue this year, and they got some favorable stuff. But still, I have them in my top 4. Both just like you, I have Houston out of the top 4. I have them at 5. And I just think that field goal percentages could bite them in the ass, and they could be one of those teams ousted early if they're not hitting their shots. Kentucky 6, Creighton 7, and Auburn number 8. So I'm not that far different from you in that. So that's good stuff. Let's get into some conference tournaments then, my man. Starting with the ACC. We'll go alphabetical order here. ACC, pretty weak this year in general. Do you have any plays in the ACC? And I think I'm just going to use the DraftKings odds here. I'll quick pull them up right now. ACC. Of course, it's not the first thing that shows up here. North Carolina plus 150, Duke plus 160, Clemson plus 850. So a big difference between Duke and Clemson. Wake plus 900. Then it goes down from there. Pitt 1200, Virginia 1900. Did you play anything in this one?
Yeah, it's interesting because at the Westgate Superbook, Duke is the favorite at plus 150. North Carolina is plus 175. You definitely have to look at different books if you're going to bet these odds. And I'm not even going to get into the money line rollover discussion on this podcast because, yes, there are situations where if you rolled over each game on the money line, you're going to get a better number. I had a situation last year where I bet the number pre-tournament on futures, and I got a much better number than I would have if I did the money line rollover because one of the favorites got upset in the bracket. So it's not every case where the money line rollover gives you a better number.
Right.
But for this discussion, I'll just talk about the futures odds. I actually think Duke should be the favorite because Duke's been beat by Carolina 2 times now. And I think that senior day stuff is a big distraction sometimes. And I did like Duke Saturday against Carolina, but those senior day ceremonies and things like that, Blue Devils got off to a flat start. They were, down 12 points before you even know, and that set the tone for the game. I hate the senior day ceremonies. And I think if these teams play a third time, Duke is probably going to get Carolina the third time, even though I love Carolina's, future potential in the NCAA tournament. This is a team that definitely can win the whole thing. Odds value, I see Clemson at 10-1 at the Westgate. It wouldn't surprise me if, Clemson is the type of team that could win the ACC, but I have not bet this one yet.
I disagree with the number one. I think UNC should be number one. I just think that Duke with Filipowski there, you saw he got roughed up against Tennessee. When he plays a really defensive-oriented team, they kind of crawl back into their shell a little bit. Now, you're right about senior day being a distraction, but I just think North Carolina with Davis there, R.J. Davis, I think they have a little bit of a higher ceiling but a lower floor than Duke. I think Duke could go farther than them because of that. But I took UNC plus 190, and yes, the money line rollover, we've said it a million times, it would probably be better. But you're also betting that, they're not going to be a minus 800 against a Syracuse or something. Same thing. I took 2 plays on it. I'm taking Clemson at plus 950. I thought Clemson had Duke, and there was a little bit of a questionable call at the end of that game. But I thought, and so I think I'll be golden if UNC is against Clemson, being that they're on opposite sides of the bracket. So that's the way I took it, and obviously chances are that's not going to happen. But I feel pretty good about that. And if Duke beats me, so be it. We'll move on to the next.
Oh, I'll say one more thing about North Carolina, and this is why, if you want to buy Carolina futures by stock in the Tar Heels, I'm not going to argue with anyone. You look at the Ken Palm numbers, and Duke is 7 and Carolina's 8, but I don't really care about the overall ranking. The thing that jumps out to me is North Carolina is number 5 in defensive efficiency. When's the last time a Carolina team played defense like this, right? And then you have a lead guard in R.J. Davis who could just take over games and possibly, he's surrounded by a lot of talent too. And you have a big guy in Baycott who, if you happen to run into a team like Purdue with Zach Edey, then you got somebody who can battle him down low. I think Carolina can win the whole thing. That doesn't mean. Hey, also keep this in mind when we're talking about these conference tournaments. I'm not going to always bet on, what we think is the best team. If you think back last year, all the teams that won the Power 5 conference tournaments got knocked out of the NCAA tournament early. It's not always a good thing to win these conference tournaments. In fact, sometimes it could be a big negative. Think about we don't have time to do it all now, but you think about all the teams that won their Power. Arizona got knocked out, Purdue knocked out, go on down the line. Sometimes winning the conference tournament takes a lot out of a team, and you're actually better off losing and, not playing 3 games in 3 days, before the NCAA tournament. Just something to think about.
That's a great point. I would rather lose this tournament myself rather than give it my all and just for the big dance so I can make it far, at least to the Final Four. And that's more important to me, especially if you won the regular season already. Moving on to the American Athletic Conference. I just made a play in this, but I'll let you go first and see if we line up or if you made any plays.
I have not made a play in this conference tournament yet, but I was thinking here, I've got one I was looking at, and North Texas at about 10-1 might be a longer shot. Like, we're talking about Clemson at 10-1 in the ACC, which is a bet I might make tonight. I'm going to look around, see if I can find better than 10-1. Got to start shopping around on these a little bit more. But I think North Texas might be a team. The Mean Green, if you're looking for a longer shot. Otherwise, no, I don't have. I have not had a chance to break down this tournament in depth yet. How about you?
So I did a little bit, and the thing that sticks out for me is why is the 1 seed not the favorite? And of course, Florida Atlantic. I think they were fortunate last year. I think there's games they could have lost in the NCAA tournament. The first game against Memphis, they could have lost. They caught Tennessee. Good thing they caught them and not Duke, because Tennessee couldn't hit the broadside of a barn that day. And then, they get by a Kansas State team, a little bit overrated. They had a pretty easy way to San Diego State, in my opinion. And, this year it's kind of shown a little bit. Yet you have South Florida here who, their efficiency numbers isn't great, but they get the job done in most cases. I was on them when they were dogs at home to Florida Atlantic on Sunday, February 18th, and that was a nice win. That was a money line play for me. And round plus 200, if I remember. And, this coach here, Amir Abdur-Rahim, if it's not Lamont Paris, it's this guy who should be, coach of the year, in my opinion. So he's been great. And, they lost against Tulsa. I think that was just a throwaway game here, in my opinion, that very last game. I think this team plays really good defense. They do what you have to do to win. And this is more of a fade against Florida Atlantic, but I'm not high on anybody else. North Texas, I understand, but they did switch their coach off last year. You might be onto something because they can slow teams down. This is like literally the slowest team, average possession length and tempo in all of college basketball, right? And so they could frustrate some people. So I kind of like what you're doing there. I would pick them ahead of Florida Atlantic. So that's my 2 cents on this conference. Let's move on to the Big East. Now, I'm going to say that I looked at the odds here. I think this is UConn's to lose. I'm not going to make a play in it. I was trying to get cute and think about Creighton and think about maybe does Marquette get their guy back. But you know what? I might just leave this one alone. Maybe you have something different.
I'm probably going to bet UConn. I'm probably going to lay the price. I keep saying I don't want to bet against UConn. I'm seeing a minus 140 out there. I think that's actually a fair price. Who can beat UConn? There's not many teams in the country that can. And if Tyler Kolek, the point guard for Marquette's not out there healthy, he's got that oblique injury. Marquette's one team that I think can beat UConn within the Big East, but obviously Creighton's another because we've seen it happen. But this is going to be a different story with this tournament at the Garden. I'll make 2 plays on this. I'm going to bet UConn to win it, and I'm going to make a small long shot bet on the man in the white suit, Rick Pitino, and St. John's at about 15-1 to possibly make a run at the Garden. But I'll have a much bigger play here on UConn. I think it's not going to be surprising to me if UConn doesn't lose another game the rest of the way. It's just a complete team. The only problem is there's not a lot of depth on Danny Hurley's bench. But otherwise, you really can't find a weakness there. I mean, if you want to talk about lack of depth, look at Houston. Houston's the number 1 team in the country right now in the polls, but Kelvin Sampson really doesn't have a bench. He's got 3 injuries he had to deal with recently, and you got no depth in the low post. So if you put Houston and UConn on a neutral floor, what would you make the number? I'll ask you that because I always laugh at the AP poll a lot of times. Houston's number 1. There's no freaking way.
Without a doubt.
Anybody who handicaps this stuff would have Houston favored or would have UConn favored against Houston on a neutral, right?
Without a doubt. UConn's favored against Houston by 2 points, in my opinion. I would be shocked. And so sometimes efficiency sites are a little wrong too, just because teams like to blow out teams more often. And if your schedule wasn't that great in the non-conference like Houston's and a few others, then that's what it is. And the truth is that Houston took care of business, but they showed their flaws. They showed some flaws this year. And I think UConn, coming off in a letdown year, did a lot better than I expected anyway. With Klingon and a couple of the guys that they picked up from last year, I really like that Cam Spencer. He's just having a wonderful year there. They're not super deep either, but UConn would for sure be a 2-point favorite in my opinion. So 100% agreement with you on that one. If not, I'm betting them. So we'll just say that. How about the Big Ten? So we just, talked about Purdue a little bit. What are your thoughts on the Big Ten? Obviously, Purdue, the big favorite in this. I think they're even plus 100. Yeah, in DraftKings, plus 100. Illinois, plus 300. Then Nebraska, believe it or not, plus 700. Michigan State, I thought 10-1. And it all goes down from there.
Well, like I said, I don't think it would be the worst thing for Purdue to actually lose in this tournament. And, there's the sense of urgency for the Boilermakers should not be great because they won the tournament last year. They've won the regular season championship back-to-back years by 3 games or more. And really next week is how the NCAA tournament, the next 2 weeks is how Purdue's going to be judged by everyone, right? Nobody gives a crap about what Purdue does in the Big Ten or the non-conference. They want to say, can you win games in the tournament? Exactly. And that's it. That's what the whole season's come down to for this team. Now, I like Illinois a little bit in this conference tournament, and I'll give you a long shot. Ohio State at 35-1. I think since the coaching change, they got rid of Diebler in there, has really cranked up the defensive pressure. The intensity that the Buckeyes play with on the defensive end has been a 180 from what they were with Chris Holtmann sleepwalking out there on the sideline. And you can see that Ohio State's just been rejuvenated as a team. Now, Buckeyes would have to beat Iowa, then they'd have to run into Illinois, to get through that half of the bracket. But I think Ohio State's a dangerous team. Small play on a long shot there at around 35-1. I haven't bet it yet, but like I said, I'm shopping around today and tonight trying to find the best numbers on some of these. And that 35 is the best one I've seen so far. What's that?
That's a great look because this is similar to how I'm betting the Pac-12 as well. And, I'm going to think about that now that you mentioned that. Maybe you're right. Ohio State's playing great ball right now, and they're hot right now. And 35-1 is a really good number. Now, I don't even know if the money line rollover would work out for you because you just have to hope they're playing Purdue in the championship game. If they happen to play Wisconsin or Michigan State, you might not get 35-1 there. Mm-hmm. So that's an amazing point right there. Love it. Let's move on to one you brought up to me, and I'm really curious where you have here. You said you have a big write-up on it. Maybe check out vsin.com afterwards. The Big West. So what do you got cooking in the Big West?
It's not that intriguing, trust me, but I had to write up the Big West Conference and the Pac-12 for vsin.com, and I was working on it last night. And obviously, UC Irvine is the favorite in the conference. Odds-on favorite at minus 200 at DraftKings. But, the Anteaters have they've won a share or won this conference outright 3 years in a row, but the last 2 years they got upset in this tournament. Now, UC San Diego, the number 2 team in the standings, still transitioning to Division I, so the Tritons are not going to play in this tournament this week. I think the dangerous team here is UC Davis. And I say that UC Davis you're going to find at plus 450 or 5-1 odds, and the Aggies are on the opposite half of the bracket. But if you're looking for guards who can win in the tournament, UC Davis has got 2 of them. Elijah Pepper averages 20.5 points, and Ty Johnson averages 17.5. These are 2 of the most dynamic playmaking guards in the Big West, and they're in the same backcourt. And Pepper had 26 points in an overtime loss at Irvine. Johnson hit the winning three-pointer when UC Davis got revenge a couple weeks later. I think UC Davis plus 450 would be the play in the Big West instead of laying. I don't want to ever talk about conference tournaments and say, play the favorite in this at minus 150, play the favorite in this at minus 200. If you've been watching these small conference tournaments, you've seen wild things happen already. We see it every year. Colgate was down big yesterday, UNC Asheville, Indiana State. There's so many examples you have of the dominant teams in the conference just getting hammered in conference tournaments. And a lot of times it doesn't make sense. But I would say Irvine deserves to be the favorite, but if you're looking for a better price, UC Davis at plus 450 or so.
All right, UC Davis. I wrote this one down, baby, so I'm going to look into this one right afterwards. Mountain West. Mountain West I should call it the Mountain Mess because I see 7 teams that can win it and terrible odds. So maybe you found something better than me.
Well, I don't like San Diego State to win the conference tournament. And I know that's going to be the popular pick by a lot of people. I'm looking at the odds board right now, and San Diego State is the favorite. But the Aztecs have not been playing well, and they have not been really rebounding or defending like they had in the past. I kind of feel like they're living off last year's reputation a little bit. You see a team get to the Final Four, get to the championship game, and then all of a sudden people think, well, now that we've seen them do it, we're going to bet on them the next year. We're going to bet on them in the future because we know it can happen. I don't think this Aztecs team's nearly as good as it was a year ago. And you had a key guy like Keyshawn Johnson who transferred to Arizona. So I don't think San Diego State, which got beat in Vegas last week and then got beat at home by Boise in the regular season finale, is going to win this conference tournament. I've seen Aztecs at like plus 275 favorites. I don't think Utah State, with just one regular season championship, is going to play with a great sense of urgency. And also looked like a team to me that was running on fumes, might be a little bit out of gas when I watched that Nevada-Utah State game Saturday. How about Nevada at 5-1 or Boise State at 6-1? I think that would be where I would start in the Mountain West.
Yeah, I think if I had to make a bet, it'd be Nevada, but I personally would do a money line rollover on this one. 5-1, you should be able to do a lot better than that because you keep doubling your money side. So I'm gonna, since you kind of mentioned them as well, I'm gonna look a little deeper into Nevada. Let's move on to the Pac-12 tournament. Now, as soon as these odds came out on Sunday on DraftKings, and to be honest with you, FanDuel was a little bit slow for these odds, but DraftKings was fast. I took USC at 45-1. I had USC on the money line against Arizona, and I've been betting USC the last 4 games, and they have been just covering like masters. And that Washington State game too, even though they lost that was one hell of an effort. And Washington State had to really dig deep to win that game. Couldn't believe they lost against Washington afterwards. But anyways, USC needs this bad. Does Arizona need to win a dying conference that's not going to be around next year's conference tournament? Absolutely not. If they think they may be going to get a 1 seed, man, I'd rather bet on a dog that's fighting for his life than that just wants a better dessert. So I took USC at 45-1. It's down to 35-1 at this book at DraftKings, and you can probably still find some 40-1s. I know they have a tough draw, but I think this team could do it.
Well, you said most of it there. I talked about a week or 10 days ago about USC. I said, watch out. This team's coming on strong. They're finally healthy. They got all these promising young players on the floor together, and they're getting it together. Don't forget, USC, a lot of people thought was a top 25 team preseason, and it just didn't come together. Injuries were part of it. I heard somebody, I think it was BetMGM, opened USC at 50-1. Somebody told me that Sunday, and by the time I tried to get the bet, the number had moved dramatically. So I think 35-1 might be the best you can find. So I will have a small play on USC. The one thing that kind of bums me out is the draw really stinks because, USC is going to have to get by Washington, which shouldn't be a problem, shouldn't be a big problem. And then you got to play Arizona in the next game. Are you going to beat Arizona twice in a week? After the Cats just had their butts kicked and Caleb Love played terribly in that game Saturday night. I don't love that situation, man. I really wish USC was on a different half of the bracket than Arizona and didn't have to play the Cats in the second game of the Pac-12 tournament. But with Boogie Ellis, Isaiah Collier, and all the pieces surrounding those two guards, I think USC can make a run and win this conference tournament. And like you said, I almost feel like you watch Arizona lose to Princeton in the first round last year. You watch Purdue lose in the first round. Those two teams won their conference tournaments. I almost feel like Arizona would be better off just losing this one. They shouldn't be playing with a great sense of urgency. They are by far the best team in the Pac-12. But again, that doesn't matter a lot of times when you're talking about conference tournaments and results. Colorado could be a dangerous team here. But yeah, give me a small play on USC, and let's see how that plays out, because I think it's a dangerous team, just like you said.
Absolutely, and I think it's similar to the Ohio State situation, another dog fighting for their lives to make the NCAA tournament. SEC, last one we have to talk about here. Obviously, this is one of the most exciting conferences this year. Lots of drama. Home court was massive, just like in the Big Ten in the SEC. What are your thoughts on this one?
So you remember Alabama won this conference tournament last year, and then what happened to the Tide in the tournament? They shot 3 for 27 from 3 and got knocked out by San Diego State, right?
Yep.
Sometimes it's better off not winning these Power 5 conference tournaments, but I don't know how you handicap this one. You got so many elite teams. I love the SEC this season. I would say, how about this? Before I started talking with you about these futures, I was looking at the SEC and saying, okay, is there a long shot here that you could play in this conference? Because you don't really want to take 4-1 or 5-1 on some of the elite teams. Like you said, you could do the money line rollover in that case if you felt like it. I love Kentucky, but I'm not taking Kentucky at plus 450 to win this tournament. No way. How about a long shot? If you're going to look at South Carolina at 60-1, or maybe Florida at 20-1, something like that is maybe what I'll consider. Chris Zanook just sent me a text, said sometimes it's better not to win the conference tournaments. I said,
Chris, that's good stuff. No, I think we said that too much. Maybe.
Huh?
I think maybe we mentioned that. We might have mentioned that too much.
I think we probably said that 4 or 5 times, so I'm not going to say it again. Okay.
It's important stuff, though. That's the truth. I did bet Kentucky, and the only reason I did is because I'm just fading Tennessee on one side, and I want someone from the other side. I don't like Alabama at all. I think they're inconsistent. I don't think they're as good as they were last year, and I don't think they want to win it this year because you saw what happened last year. So throw the number 3 out. You got Kentucky's a 2 seed at 4-1. They get the double bye, so okay. But I took Florida at 20-1. So whatever makes it, that's fine. Florida has a single bye, obviously, at the 6 seed. But Florida is just an amazing offensive rebounding team. They've already I believe, upset Kentucky. Yeah, they went to Kentucky and won. So if that happens, I think I'd rather have my 20-1 in that situation if that comes down to a final game here. But I think Ole Miss was massively overrated, and they showed their true colors. Texas A&M, they fought like hard at the end of the season, but the truth is they're not going to get to play against terrible defenses like Ole Miss the whole year. Georgia and Missouri, forget about it. So I'm hoping that's one of these teams against Tennessee. And if it's not Tennessee, maybe it's South Carolina, maybe it's Auburn. I would be in a pretty good situation then. But the truth is a moneyline rollover is better for Kentucky if it's going to be Tennessee, but we don't know what's going to happen. So that's how I attacked this one, Matt. But, hey, we are out of time, my man. We broke down these conference tournaments very well. Really appreciate your information. I wrote down Ohio State, UC Davis, and we'll take a look at Nevada here. But I'm really excited for it, just like you are. For anybody new to Matt Youmans or VSiN, where could our listeners and viewers get your wonderful information?
I would say the first thing to do is just call Chris Zanook and then see if he can hook you up.
Call Chris, and he will hook you up with Matt Youmans' information.
Well, that can work as my media agent. Just one thing, remember, sometimes it's not always good to win the conference tournaments.
Yeah, if that and you, it's hard to beat a team 3 times, right? Isn't that what everyone says? Those are the 2 ones that we pound to death, man. Thank you very much. We'll be texting over the weekend.
All right, you bet. Good luck in the tournaments this week and next week as well. Thanks.
My friends, thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you have any questions for us for our next show during conference tournaments, please feel free to tweet us at The Oddsbreakers. Email us at info@theoddsbreakers.com. Have a great rest of your week. Make sure you get into our conference tournament challenges and go get some winners.